I sat in my grandma and grandpa's kitchen at their large, heavily used and loved kitchen table. A mess of photographs covered the entire table, showing more celluloid than wooden varnish. My grandma picked up each photograph with care and admiration and passed them systematically to me. Each photo revealing a stolen memory, a special moment immortalized through light, and more importantly, a depiction of the time lapse of a very special woman that is held dear in my family. My grandparents' home is notorious for being filled with family celebrations, strangers who are greeted as friends, and friends who are greeted as family, and most of all, chihuahuas. At this time, I came over to seek information from my grandma about her mother and my late great grandmother, Eleanor Woods, that of which was the glamorous debutante that was captured in each snapshot scattered across the table before me. I walked in with only faded memories that I possessed from when I was younger, but left with a lifetime of stories that were fit only for a queen. With complete truth, I have always been apprehensively envious of people who lived in the 20th century. It just seems to be such a significant time lapse, especially pertaining to American history. Culture perpetually changed dramatically and beautifully. Technology went from nothing to everything, and then came the realization that there is not one crevice on this earth that could not be explored, and our intergalactic possibilities were unlimited. More simply, people during this era of growth and discovery do not take anything for granted. The reason why I'm apprehensive, however, is because these men and women are now a piece of that history. All this came entirely full circle when learning Momo's life story. I sat adjacent to my grandma in the scuffed chairs that have been scooted and pushed continuously by generations of clients throughout a lifetime, and began with the simple questions pertaining to the bio and origins of Momo. On April 12, 1916, Eleanor Woods was born in Roothouse, Illinois, and attended William Woods College. She came, like all great people do, from a humble beginning. Her parents were rarely present, which left Eleanor to fend for herself. She, from what I understand, raised and created a life for herself almost entirely alone. My grandma blushed as she confessed to me that my great grandmother's extreme beauty and electric personality landed her a position as a lingerie model for numerous and highly respected clothing catalogs. For the sake of preserving my great grandmother's modesty, she was simply a model, not to be confused with smut. She designed herself in her own clothing, and attention followed every click of her heels. I have seen a plethora of professional photographs of my great grandmother in her youth, but her most infamous is a moment captured at the Coney Island Pier. It is shaded by hues of gray and black, and she stands with her close friend of the time, pointing with frail yet perfectly poised fingers, exposing the extreme temperature of the day. In the other hand, she was holding a soft serve ice cream cone that was sweating warm vanilla drips from the heat. Her face, painted lightly with makeup, and her lips, open to show the expression of shock, seemed like cherries in the spring, but unfortunately shone dark through the filtered photograph. To compare her to any of the famous women of her era would be a crime. She was a beauty queen in her own right, and her femininity and transcendence entranced and continues to throughout all decades. Later, she attended the Williams Woods College located in Fulton, Missouri. During her education, she studied speech therapy and witnessed several monumental moments in history, like meeting the political powerhouse Winston Churchill. It was during this time that she also met her future husband and my great grandfather, Thomas Woods. The moment that they met, my great grandfather changed her name to Polly. My grandma lowered her voice all the way down to a baritone to mimic her father, saying, "I've always thought she looked like a Polly, so I called her Polly." To say Polly's vision was impaired by the pink hue of rose-colored glasses would be an understatement. I believe truly that life is only worth living if somebody is loving you, or the world is designed for two, and I have learned this from observing my late great-grandparents and their years of elderly. They quickly married and started a family of 4 children in the suburbs of Akron. Thomas worked as the head of advertisement for the Firestone Rubber Company. Amongst his many contributions, he coined the phrase, "where rubber meets the road." My great-grandfather's corporate status allowed his darling wife to show off her electric personality at all of Akron's high society's extravagant parties as a social elite. My grandma talks very highly of her mother, but does express that her social nature left her absent from the home frequently. My grandma quickly became the right hand of the house and claimed the throne as the rightful sibling disciplinarian. Although it was an exhausting and time-consuming task, it allowed her once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Alongside her mother, together they fed and served a notorious clan of Indy 500 race car drivers in the mid-1960s. Because racing tires were designed and manufactured in Akron, my great-grandfather was given the responsibility of promoting the product, which even more so allowed Polly and her daughter Karen, my grandmother, to extend her vibrant personality to these famous drivers. Polly and Thomas grew old together. They raised 4 successful children, that of whom all had 14 of their own successful children, and it was my Uncle Casey who is said to have started the names Momo and Papo, which became their primary titles ever since. In addition, the 14 grandchildren in total had 11 children, but only 7 were alive in time to be to be a great-grandchild. Like a wedding ring banded in silver, physically Momo began to tarnish over the years, but similar to the precious gemstone planted in the center, her spirit lasted longer than her exterior. Her silky ribbons of hair went from a dark brown to gray to the purest white, but continued to remain styled. Her fair skin lost its elasticity and gained numerous sunspots, but it was still beautiful because everyone knew she loved basking in the sun, so it was okay. But when Papa died in his early 90s, so did the light in her already faded blue eyes. Momo died shortly after, at the tired but full age of 90. If you read the doctor's notes, it will state that cancer took her life, but everyone truly believes she died of a broken heart from the passing of her husband of 66 years. Life and death are both funny. They're the ultimate contradiction, but are the closest of the cosmic relations. I wrote a letter to Momo very recently expressing my love and remembrance of her, for and of her, but I could not very well say I missed her. Taking the liberty of phrasing Newton's law of the conservation of energy into my own words, it states that energy can never be created nor destroyed. With that in mind, it is hard to miss someone who I believe never left. Momo may have had her ashes laid in the family's local cemetery, but she certainly is not gone. I see her and my grandmother every time I ask if she needs help with anything, and she responds with a sweet, "No thanks, hon." I also see Momo every time my grandma wags her accident-induced short index finger at a grandchild while scolding he or she. Momo instilled independence and an authoritative discipline in my grandmother that can never be removed. In addition, I feel Momo's presence in every social gathering at my grandparents' home. Momo taught my grandma top-of-the-line hospitality and also how to bring people together and give joy to everyone, even if it is for a few hours. I also see Momo and my father every single day. Her energy gave him a rational mind and taught him a sense of peacefulness while he was spending summers with them soaking out back in white sunshine and while watching cult films in their basement. I see her within him, especially when he corrects the grammar of my siblings and me. "Got" is not a word, you say "I have." I even see Momo myself. Both Momo and Papa give me a finesse or social competence, which allows me to be confident in control rooms full of white noise and conversation. It was something I never had to learn or acquire, but rather seems to be something innate and feels to be an indelible ink that courses through my veins, carrying a dancing collision of atoms in my bloodstream infused by my late great-grandparents. Despite the daily reminders that are present in my family's genealogy, I still wish Momo and Papa, obviously included, were here every now and then. Whenever I feel stressed or my head starts thinking in that breathless way that derives from having too many people in a confined space, I mentally transport myself years back to a family vacation in Utah. For 2 weeks, our family was confined in houseboats on Lake Powell. The western heat was intensified from the massive sun-baked orange sandstone rocks that surrounded us, creating an oven-like effect. Momo's houseboat was the only floating residence amongst our family that had air conditioning, so I would continuously emigrate myself to the boat for a reprieve from the exhausting heat. Every time I knocked on their sliding glass door, Momo would release one of her infamous belly laughs and grin. She would set me down on her wide lap, and we would just sit and sway to the lake's viscous rhythm. I would occasionally twist myself around, being careful not to puncture her frail body structure. I would then say something innocent, something only a 6-year-old could come up with, leaving Momo with another hearty laugh that would have her grinning. Her open mouth exposed her gold-encrusted molars that seemed so royal and exotic to me in my time of innocence. I remember looking in those organic jewels and being reminded of the yellow lights that were systematically scattered across the tunnels that penetrated the mountains that we passed on the way to our destination. The memory always provides me with the warm blanket of comfort that I need when I'm left cold from reality. In addition, from the same letter I previously wrote to Momo, I expressed how I was almost ashamed to write her at this particular point in my late adolescence. I confess that I feel as if I've been living a disreputable life, and how I wanted to be able to write to her during a time that she could look at me with the same proud shine in her eyes that she had when I was lunging myself off those huge sand rocks into the water so many years prior. Seeking the silver lining, I have, however, been doing it with good style, which is something I think she would appreciate. The inheritance Momo left me went rightfully to my tuition to further my education. However, my first semester was an atrocity, a true blemish on my academic record, but not all hope was lost. I picked up the shards that were slicing my feet beneath me, and began the long road of reconstruction. I know and can say with the confidence that she bestowed within me that she would be pleased to hear that everyone is doing well, and finally, I can include myself in that. My great-grandmother raised an empire of successful, independent, and well-bred, spoken and groomed, if I may say, individuals. I am not asking for her permission to write about her, but rather taking as an honor because that is exactly how I know she would have done it. Okay.